Commander Daeho Kim sat with his back straight in the large round chamber of the Galactic Coalition War Council. He tried not to fidget as 12 pairs of alien eyes watched him. Some blinked sideways. Others glowed with inner light. A few weren't eyes at all, but sensing organs that humans had no words for. The massive chamber felt cold. Its high ceiling disappeared into shadows far above. The round table was made of a black material that looked like stone, but felt warm to the touch. Daeho's fingers tapped nervously on its smooth surface. The Morkai swarm has consumed 3 solar systems in less than 60 days, said Admiral Thress of the Varric. Admiral Thress stood nearly 8 feet tall. His gray skin was covered in armored plates. When he spoke, his 4-part jaw clicked between words. The Varric were the Coalition's main military force. They valued strength and direct action. We must strike immediately with our combined fleets. Thress continued. We will crush them with superior firepower. Across the table, Councillor Zira of the Lumi race shimmered with disagreement. The Lumi looked like tall humans made of crystal. Light moved through their bodies in patterns that matched their emotions. Right now, Zira glowed angry red. Your approach will fail, Admiral, Zira said. Her voice sounded like wind chimes. The Morkai are a hive mind. They learn from every encounter. A direct attack will only make them stronger, and doing nothing will allow them to grow even stronger. Thress slammed his fist on the table. The sound echoed through the chamber. Daeho looked at the star map floating above the table. It showed the path of the Morkai swarm, a fast-moving cloud of millions of small ships that ate everything in their path. Planets, stations, even asteroids. They broke everything down and used the materials to make more Morkai ships. His ship, the Earth vessel Perseverance, had been the first to spot the swarm 3 months ago. By pure luck, they had escaped. No one else had been so lucky. If I may speak, Daeho said. The room fell silent. Humans were new to the Coalition. Earth had only joined 5 years ago. Most alien species still viewed humans as primitive. Their technology was far behind the other races. But humans had proven useful in unexpected ways. The human wishes to speak, announced the Ashari moderator, a thin being with pale blue skin and eyes that took up half its face. The Ashari were telepaths who could read most species' thoughts, but human minds gave them headaches. Too chaotic, they said. Daeho stood up. He felt small among these powerful aliens. But he had an idea, and he knew how to share it. When I was a boy, he began, my grandfather told me about a great naval commander from our history. His name was Admiral Yi Sun-sin. Immediately, Daeho felt the mood in the room shift. Several delegates exchanged confused glances. The Varric Admiral's jaw plates clicked in annoyance. The Lumi counselor dimmed her light slightly. Human, interrupted a squat delegate from the Mox Federation. We face extinction. This is no time for your species' entertainment rituals. Jimin Park, Earth's official diplomat to the Coalition, raised her hand from her seat beside Daeho. She was the second human in the room, dressed in the blue and white uniform of the Earth Diplomatic Corps. Respected delegates, she said with practiced calm, I ask that you allow Commander Kim to continue. There is purpose to his words. The Ashari moderator tilted its large head, curious. After a moment, it nodded. The human may continue this story. Daeho nodded his thanks to Jimin. She gave him a small smile. She understood what he was doing. Admiral Yi faced an impossible situation. Daeho continued. His country, Korea, was invaded by a much stronger enemy, Japan. In one particular battle at Myeongyang Strait, Admiral Yi had only 13 ships left. The Japanese fleet had 133 ships. The star map above the table shifted, showing the narrow water passage from Earth's history. The Coalition delegates watched, with mixed interest and confusion. Admiral Yi was outnumbered 10-1, Daeho said. By your logical calculations, he should have retreated, or surrendered. Instead, he chose to fight. Then he was a fool, rumbled Admiral Thress. Perhaps, said Daeho with a small smile. But Admiral Yi knew something his enemies did not. He understood the water currents in the strait. They were strong and unpredictable, except Yi had studied them his whole life. The Varric admiral's interest seemed to grow despite himself. Terrain advantage? Yes. Yi positioned his 13 ships where the strait was narrowest. When the Japanese fleet entered the strait, they faced strong currents they didn't expect. Their ships couldn't maneuver properly. They couldn't use their greater numbers effectively in the narrow space. The star map changed again, showing small, blue dots representing Yi's ships at the narrowest point of the strait, with many red dots approaching. Several council members leaned forward now, their earlier irritation changing to curiosity. Admiral Yi attacked when the tide shifted. Daeho continued. The Japanese ships couldn't retreat against the current. They couldn't advance properly. They crashed into each other trying to maneuver, and Yi's ships picked them off one by one. The blue dots in the map began to move, showing the battle play out as Daeho described it. When the battle ended, Yi had lost no ships, but he sank 31 Japanese ships and damaged many more. The Japanese fleet retreated. Complete silence filled the council chamber. Even the Varric admiral seemed impressed. Counselor Zira of the Lumi broke the silence. An interesting history lesson, Commander. But what does an ancient water battle on your world have to do with fighting the Morkai in space? Daeho pointed to the original star map. The Morkai swarm is approaching the Tannhauser Nebula here. The nebula creates unpredictable gravimetric currents, like the water currents in the strait. We don't need to attack the Morkai with brute force. We need to lead them into the nebula and use the environment against them. Admiral Thress stood, suddenly. His massive form towered over the table. For a moment, Daeho thought he had angered the Varric commander. Instead, Thress pointed at the map. The human suggests a trap. We position our fastest ships here as bait. We lead the swarm into the narrowest part of the nebula. Then our main fleet attacks from these positions when they're disoriented by the gravimetric eddies. The star map shifted as Thress spoke, showing the battle plan forming. Zira of the Lumi began to glow bright blue, a sign of approval. This plan uses the swarm's momentum against itself. Brilliant. Around the table, delegates that had been arguing moments ago now worked together, refining the plan that had emerged from Daeho's story. Jimin leaned close to Daeho and whispered, "Well done. You've given them a framework they can understand." Daeho nodded. Humans have been telling stories about war for thousands of years. Sometimes the old lessons are the best ones. The Ashari moderator approached them, its large eyes blinking slowly. This is not the first time a human story has provided unexpected wisdom to the council. There is something unique in how your minds work. As the council continued planning, Daeho noticed several junior delegates whispering among themselves, occasionally glancing at the two humans. He caught a phrase from one of them speaking to a colleague. Never interrupt when a human tells a story in War Council. Their strange minds see patterns ours cannot. Daeho smiled to himself. Perhaps humans had more to offer the galaxy than they knew. 3 days after the War Council meeting, Jimin Park stood at the viewing window of the Coalition Station Unity Point. The massive space structure orbited a gas giant with rings that shimmered purple and gold. From here, she could see ships from all 12 species of the Galactic Coalition gathering for the battle against the Morkai swarm. Her reflection showed a woman in her 40s, with short black hair and the blue and white uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. Dark circles under her eyes revealed the stress of recent days. "You should rest," said a voice behind her. Jimin turned to see Daeho approaching. He looked tired too, but there was energy in his steps. "The fleet launches tomorrow," she said. "Sleep can wait." Daeho joined her at the window. "The Admiral's plan, your plan, has everyone excited. The Varric are calling it the Yi maneuver." Jimin smiled. "They've already forgotten it was your idea." "That doesn't matter. What matters is that it works." A group of alien diplomats entered the observation deck. When they noticed the two humans, they stopped talking and stared. One of them, a young Ashari aide with large blue eyes, approached hesitantly. "Excuse me," the Ashari said in careful human English. "Is it true that humans use stories to see the future?" Jimin and Daeho exchanged amused glances. Not exactly, Jimin explained. We use stories to understand patterns, to make sense of complex situations. The young Eschery looked disappointed. Oh, some of the junior delegates believe humans have special powers. They say you see things others cannot. Not powers, Daeho said. Just a different way of thinking. After the Ashari left, Jimin laughed softly. Now they think we're wizards. Better than being seen as primitives, Daeho replied. Jimin's smile faded. This reminds me of what happened with Sunwoo 3 years ago. Sunwoo Kang, the diplomat, who handled the Varric-Lumi crisis. Jimin nodded. I was there. It was my first assignment with the coalition. 3 years earlier, Jimin stood nervously in her new uniform at the back of a negotiation room. 2 alien species faced each other across a table. On one side sat 3 Varric officers, their gray armored bodies tense with anger. On the other side were 4 Lumi delegates, their crystal bodies pulsing with red and orange lights. Between them stood Sunwoo Kang, a veteran Earth diplomat in his 60s. He looked very small between the large aliens. The Duran system belongs to the Varric Imperium, growled the lead Varric. We claimed it centuries before the Lumi arrived. You abandoned those planets, chimed the lead Lumi. We built cities there, established colonies. The system is ours now. The Varric officer slammed his fist on the table. Thieves! We will take back what is ours by force if necessary. The Lumi flashed bright red. Try it, and you will find our defense is more than adequate. The 2 species were close to war. Jimin knew that such a conflict could tear apart the coalition. Sunwoo raised his hands. If I may, he said calmly, I would like to tell you about 2 ancient kingdoms from Earth's history. Both sides looked at him with confusion and annoyance. Human, said the Varric leader. This is not the time for stories. Sunwoo smiled. Please, just a few minutes. The aliens glanced at each other, then nodded reluctantly. Long ago on Earth, Sunwoo began, there were 2 kingdoms in what is now Korea. Goguryeo was a powerful kingdom to the north. Silla was a smaller kingdom to the south. They often fought each other. The aliens shifted impatiently, but Sunwoo continued. When an outside threat, the Tang Empire, invaded the Korean peninsula, Goguryeo stood strong against them. But instead of joining forces with Goguryeo, Silla made an alliance with Tang to defeat their old enemy. The Lumi and Varric were listening now despite themselves. Silla and Tang succeeded in defeating Goguryeo. But then, something unexpected happened. Tang tried to take over all Korean lands, including Silla's territory. The Tang Empire had never planned to be a true ally. They wanted everything. Sunwoo paused, looking at both sides. Silla had to fight against their former allies to maintain independence. They succeeded, but at great cost. Had Silla and Goguryeo worked together from the beginning against the outside threat, perhaps both would have remained strong. The room was silent. The Varric and Lumi delegates looked thoughtful. The Duran system sits at the edge of coalition space, Sunwoo continued. Beyond it lies the territory of the Zell Dominion, who have long wished to expand into our space. The lead Varric's eyes widened. You suggest that while we fight among ourselves, the Zell might take advantage, finished the Lumi delegate, glowing yellow with concern. Perhaps, suggested Sunwoo. The Varric could recognize Lumi development rights on the inner planets they've colonized, while the Lumi acknowledge Varric historical claims to the outer system. Together, you could create a stronger defense against any outside threats. What had seemed impossible minutes before now felt obvious to everyone in the room. The negotiations proceeded with new understanding. From the back of the room, Jimin watched in amazement as Sunwoo's simple story changed everything. Back in the present, Jimin finished telling this memory to Daeho. After that meeting, she said, an Ashari elder took me aside. He told me they had never seen anything like it. The Ashari could read the minds of both Varric and Lumi. Before Sunwoo's story, their thoughts were fixed, unchangeable. Afterward, new possibilities appeared in their minds. Daeho looked out at the gathering fleet. Humans have always used stories this way, to see new angles, to understand complex problems. The aliens don't think like us, Jimin said. Most coalition species process information directly. They analyze facts, calculate probabilities. Their thinking is efficient but linear, finished Daeho. They don't make the mental leaps that stories help us make. A soft alarm chimed through the station. The final planning meeting before tomorrow's battle would begin soon. As they walked to the meeting room, Jimin noticed more aliens watching, them with curious respect. Word had spread about how Daeho's story had shaped the battle plan. They're starting to understand, she said quietly. Not fully, replied Daeho. To them, our storytelling still seems like strange magic. They entered the war room where Admiral Thress waited with the other commanders. A massive holographic display showed the fleet positions for the Yi maneuver. Commander Kim called Thress. We've been discussing the approach to the nebula. There is disagreement about timing. Daeho looked at the display. In that case, he said with a small smile, I should tell you about another battle from our history. This one took place at a location called Thermopylae. Every alien in the room fell completely silent, their attention fixed on the human. Not one dared to interrupt. Jimin watched with pride. The aliens were learning. In a room full of advanced species with technology far beyond Earth's, a simple human story had become the most powerful weapon of all. The Coalition fleet moved into position around the Tannhauser Nebula. From the command bridge of the Coalition flagship Unyielding, Admiral Thress watched the holographic display as hundreds of ships took their places. The massive Varek commander stood with his forearms crossed over his armored chest. The Morkai swarm will arrive in 6 hours, he announced to the bridge crew. All ships report ready. Daeho and Jimin stood near the back of the bridge. They wore simple Earth uniforms that looked plain next to the elaborate armor of the Varek officers. An Ishari communications officer approached them. The High Council wishes to speak with you, the blue-skinned alien said, blinking its large eyes. Please follow me. The two humans were led to a private communication room. On a large screen, 5 alien faces appeared, the leaders of the main coalition species. Elder Zan of the Eshari spoke first. His ancient face had pale blue skin pulled tight over delicate bones. Humans, we wish to confirm that this Yi maneuver will work as planned. Jimin stepped forward. The plan is sound, Elder. Admiral Thress has adapted it well to space combat. Yet, it comes from an ancient water battle, said the Lumi representative, her crystal face shimmering with doubt. From a primitive time? The principles are the same, Daeho explained, using the environment, turning the enemy's strength into weakness. The Varek war chief leaned closer to the screen. We have committed our entire fleet based on your story, human. If this fails... It won't, said Jimin firmly. After the call ended, Daeho sighed. They're nervous. They should be, replied Jimin. This is the largest military operation in Coalition history. As they walked back to the bridge, a young Varek officer stopped them. His name was Krell, and he served as Admiral Thress's aide. There's something I want to show you, he said, looking around to make sure no one was listening. It's about another human, from 6 cycles ago. Krell led them to a small meeting room and activated a screen on the wall. This is from the Coalition archives. It's not widely shared. The screen showed a recording of another War Council meeting. A human woman in an Earth military uniform stood before alien leaders. The date stamp showed it was from 6 years earlier. That's Admiral Tae-Yan Choi, said Jimin with surprise. She led our first major joint operation with the Coalition. On the screen, Admiral Choi was speaking about a supply problem. The Coalition forces were stuck outside the Proxima system, unable to move forward because their supply lines were stretched too thin. We face a similar problem to one of Earth's greatest military commanders, Admiral Choi was saying on the recording. His name was Hannibal Barca, and he needed to move his army across a mountain range called the Alps. In the recording, a large Varek officer stood up angrily. Human, we don't have time for your species entertainment rituals. We need solutions, not stories. The Varek on the screen was General Vexlar, Admiral Thress's predecessor. He looked ready to force Admiral Choi to sit down, but before he could, the Ashari Elder, a younger version of Elder Zan, raised his hand. Let the human continue. I sense purpose in her words. Reluctantly, General Vexelar sat down. Admiral Choi continued her story about how Hannibal used vinegar and fire to break apart large rocks blocking his path through the mountains. As her story progressed, the aliens in the recording began to understand her point. They realized they could use a similar method to break apart an asteroid field blocking their supply route. Krell paused the recording. After this meeting, the Coalition adapted Hannibal's rock-breaking technique to clear the asteroid field. The operation succeeded. Without the human story, we would have failed. Why isn't this widely known? Asked Daeho. Krell looked uncomfortable. General Vexelar didn't want to admit that a human provided the solution. He took credit for the idea. That doesn't surprise me, Jimin said. The Varek are proud. But Admiral Thress is different, said Krell. After your story about Admiral Yi, he researched human military history. He found this recording and showed it to his top officers. He told us we should never interrupt a human telling a story during war planning. Daeho looked at the frozen image of Admiral Choi on the screen. She opened the door for us. After the Proxima campaign, Krell continued, Elder Zan began collecting human stories. He has a database of them now. He believes humans see patterns that other species miss. The alarm sounded, calling them back to the bridge. The Morkai swarm had been detected, approaching faster than expected. On the main bridge, Admiral Thress directed his fleet with calm precision. The plan was in motion. Fast coalition ships moved to the edge of the nebula, acting as bait to draw the Morkai swarm into the trap. The swarm has changed course, reported a sensor officer. They're pursuing our bait ships. Just as planned, said Admiral Thress. All ships, maintain positions. The massive view screen showed thousands of small Morkai ships chasing the coalition. Bait vessels. The swarm looked like a dark cloud moving through space. Bait ships entering the nebula now, announced the communications officer. Everyone on the bridge watched as the fast coalition ships dived into the colorful gases of the nebula. The Morkai swarm followed, eager to catch their prey. Now we wait, said Admiral Thress. Jimin moved closer to Daeho. Do you think Admiral Yi would recognize his strategy being used in space? She whispered. Daeho smiled. I think he'd be proud. Minutes passed in tense silence. Then the sensor officer spoke. The Morkai swarm is fully inside the narrowest part of the nebula. Gravitational eddies are affecting their formation. On the screen, they could see the swarm breaking apart, the small ships losing their tight formation as they were pulled in different directions by the nebula's strange gravity. Now, ordered Admiral Thress. All ships attack. The main coalition fleet moved forward, emerging from hiding places within the nebula's gas clouds. They surrounded the confused Morkai swarm, attacking from all sides. The bridge crew cheered as the first reports came in. The Morkai ships couldn't coordinate properly. The swarm's normal advantage, its perfect unity, had become a weakness in the unpredictable currents of the nebula. Admiral Thress turned to look at Daeho and Jimin. The massive Varek gave them a respectful nod. The Yi maneuver works, he said simply. Later, as the battle continued to go well, Elder Zan visited the bridge. The ancient Ishari approached the two humans. There is a saying spreading among the coalition species. He told them in his soft voice, never interrupt a human when they tell stories during war. The solution often hides within their tales. Daeho looked at the battle display, where coalition ships were systematically destroying the trapped Morkai swarm. Our stories connect past and present, he said. They help us see patterns that might not be obvious. A strange and powerful gift, said Elder Zan thoughtfully. Perhaps more valuable than any technology. As coalition ships reported victory after victory against the helpless Morkai swarm, Jimin knew that humans had found their place in the galactic community. Not through superior weapons or advanced science, but through the ancient human art of storytelling. 2 weeks after the battle at the Tannhauser Nebula, Coalition leaders gathered on the central world of Ishar for a victory celebration. The grand hall sparkled with lights that floated in the air like stars. Representatives from all 12 species of the coalition mingled together, sharing stories of the battle. Deho stood near a large window looking out at the beautiful city with its tall crystal towers. He wore a formal Earth uniform with new medals pinned to his chest. The coalition had honored him for his contribution to the victory. "You look uncomfortable," said Jimin, joining him with 2 glasses of blue liquid. She handed one to him. "I'm not used to being the center of attention," he replied, taking a small sip. The drink tasted like sweet berries with a hint of something spicy. "Well, get used to it. You're the hero who saved the coalition with a story." Across the room, Admiral Thress towered over a group of Varek officers. When he noticed the 2 humans, he excused himself and walked toward them. His heavy footsteps made small vibrations in the floor. "Commander Kim," he said, his 4-part jaw clicking between words. "The Coalition Defense Council wishes to meet with you tomorrow." "What about?" asked Deho. "They want to form a new advisory group, humans who can share your perspective." The Admiral seemed to struggle with the concept. "Your stories have proven valuable." After the Admiral left, Jimin grinned. "See? I told you." Before Deho could respond, a commotion started near the main entrance. A group of Coalition scientists rushed in looking worried. They headed straight for the Coalition leaders gathered at the far end of the hall. "Something's wrong," said Jimin. An announcement came over the speakers in multiple languages. "All military commanders and senior officials, please report to the Emergency Council Chamber immediately." In the large circular council chamber, Deho and Jimin found seats near the back. The room filled quickly with representatives from all coalition species. At the center, a group of scientists stood around a holographic display showing what looked like a star map. Elder Zan of the Ashari spoke first. "We have received disturbing news. The Morkai swarm was not destroyed as we believed. Our sensors detect new activity in the Helios sector." Murmurs of concern spread through the chamber. The Helios sector was dangerously close to several populated systems. A Lumi scientist stepped forward, her crystal body glowing with worried yellow light. "The swarm has adapted. The survivors have changed their formation. They no longer move as a single unit but in smaller independent groups," Admiral Thress growled. "They learned from their defeat. They won't be trapped the same way again." "Worse," continued the Lumi scientist. "They appear to be constructing larger ships, more powerful than before." The holographic display changed to show new Morkai vessels. Instead of the small drone ships they had faced before, these were massive structures with heavy armor. "Our previous strategy won't work against these," said a Varek commander. "We need more firepower." "We don't have time to build more ships," said another official. "The new Morkai fleet will reach populated worlds in less than 30 days. The chamber erupted in argument. Some leaders wanted to evacuate the threatened systems. Others wanted to gather the entire coalition fleet for a direct attack. No one could agree on a plan. In the middle of the chaos, Admiral Thress raised his voice. "Commander Kim, do humans have a story for this situation?" The room fell silent. All eyes turned to Deho, who sat stunned in his seat. He hadn't expected to be called upon. Slowly he stood up. Jimin gave his arm an encouraging squeeze. Deho walked to the center of the chamber. He looked at the holographic display showing the new Morkai ships. An idea formed in his mind. "There is an old story from Earth," he began, "about a war between the Greeks and the Trojans." The coalition leaders watched him with complete attention. Not a single sound interrupted his words. "The Greeks had been trying to defeat the city of Troy for 10 years, Deho continued. "But Troy had strong walls that could not be broken. No matter how much force the Greeks used, they could not get inside." He pointed to the display of the new Morkai ships. Like these new vessels, Troy was too well protected for a direct attack. "What did these Greeks do?" asked Elder Zan, leaning forward with interest. "They used deception instead of force," replied Deho. "They built a large wooden horse, a hollow statue of an animal. They hid their best warriors inside it. Then they pretended to sail away, leaving the horse as a gift. Understanding began to dawn on some faces in the audience. The Trojans brought the horse inside their walls, thinking they had won. During the night, the Greek warriors climbed out and opened the city gates from the inside. The Greek army returned and captured the city. Admiral Thress stood up, his eyes wide with realization. "You suggest we use deception? Let the Morkai think they have won?" "Yes," said Deho. "But we need to understand more about how they think, how they communicate." The Lumi scientist stepped forward. "The Morkai are a hive mind. They share information through quantum signals. When one learns something, they all know it." "Then we need to feed them false information," said Jimin, joining Deho at the center. "Let them capture a few of our ships that contain misleading data about our defenses." "No," said a Varak officer. "They would extract the real information from our computers." Deho thought for a moment. "What if we created special ships that look damaged, with computers containing carefully crafted false information suggesting that our main fleet is gathering in one location when it's actually in another?" The Ashari elder nodded slowly. "The Trojan horse technique. We let them think they have gained valuable intelligence. We could place weaknesses in our defensive plans," added Admiral Thress, warming to the idea. "Weaknesses that aren't real. When they attack where they think we are vulnerable, we spring the real trap," finished Jimin. The chamber burst into excited discussion. Coalition leaders and military commanders began working on the details of the plan. They would create decoy ships with false information. They would set up fake defense positions. They would make the Morkai think they knew the coalition's plans. As the meeting continued, Deho stepped back, watching the alien leaders work. They had taken a simple story and developed it into a complex military strategy. Elder Zan approached him. "Once again, a human story provides the framework for victory." "The story of the Trojan horse is thousands of years old," said Deho. "It's taught to children on Earth." "Yet none of our species thought of such an approach," said the elder. "We think differently than humans, more directly. Your stories help us see new paths." Later, as they left the chamber, Jimin spoke quietly to Deho. "You know what this means, don't you? After this, no one in the entire coalition will ever interrupt a human telling a story." Deho smiled. "Especially not in a war council." Around them, coalition military planners were already calling their new strategy the Trojan maneuver. A simple human story was about to change the course of an interstellar war once again. 3 months after the second battle with the Morkai, Earth's diplomatic headquarters in the coalition capital hummed with activity. New human representatives arrived daily, answering the coalition's urgent call for more storytellers. Jimin stood before a group of 20 newly recruited human diplomats and military advisors. They sat in a semicircle, their faces showing a mix of excitement and confusion. Most had been rushed from Earth with little explanation for why they were suddenly so important to interstellar politics. "Welcome to Ishar," Jimin said. "I'm sure you're wondering why you were selected for this mission." A young woman in a military uniform raised her hand. "Ma'am, I was told the coalition specifically requested historians and literature professors. I'm a naval tactical officer with a background in ancient mythology. Why would the coalition want someone like me?" Jimin smiled. "Because you know stories. And for reasons that are still surprising to us, the coalition has come to value human storytelling above almost all other human contributions." She activated a large screen on the wall. It showed images from the 2 battles against the Morkai swarm. 3 months ago, we defeated the Morkai using a strategy we called the Trojan maneuver. We created decoy ships containing false information. When the Morkai captured these ships, they thought they knew our defense plans. They attacked where they expected us to be weak. The screen showed the Morkai fleet moving into position around an apparently vulnerable coalition outpost. Instead, they found our main fleet waiting in ambush. The Morkai were completely destroyed. Not a single ship escaped. A middle-aged man with professor's patches on his jacket spoke up. "You're saying this strategy came from the story of the Trojan horse?" "Exactly," said Jimin. just as our first victory came from the story of Admiral Yi Sun-sin's battle at Myeongyang Strait. In both cases, human stories provided the framework for successful military strategies. She walked slowly in front of the group. The coalition species think differently than humans. They process information directly and efficiently, but they struggle with creative leaps, with seeing unexpected connections between seemingly unrelated ideas. And our stories help them do that? Asked another recruit. Yes. When Commander Daeho told the story of Admiral Yi, he didn't just give them a strategy. He gave them a new way of thinking about the problem. The door at the back of the room opened. Daeho walked in, now wearing the new uniform of the Human Advisory Corps. Behind him came Elder Zan of the HFY Council and Admiral Thress of the Varek Fleet. The recruits stood quickly, surprised by the presence of such high-ranking aliens. Please, sit, said Elder Zan. His thin voice carried easily in the quiet room. We came to witness the training of our new human advisors. Admiral Thress stepped forward. His massive form made the room seem smaller. The coalition has created a new protocol, he announced. Every war council, every major planning session must include at least one human storyteller. A murmur of surprise ran through the recruits. This is not a request, continued the Admiral. It is now part of coalition military doctrine. We call it the Narrative Advisory Protocol. Elder Zan raised a thin blue hand. Some coalition members were reluctant to give humans such influence. They pointed out that Earth is still developing, that your technology lags centuries behind other coalition species. But results cannot be argued with, rumbled Admiral Thress. The Yi maneuver and the Trojan maneuver saved billions of lives. They proved that human perspective is valuable, even essential. Daeho stepped forward. Your job will not be easy, he told the recruits. You'll be placed with different coalition commands throughout our territory. You'll be asked to listen to problems and find stories that might help solve them. What kinds of stories should we tell? Asked a young recruit. Any stories that feel relevant, said Jimin. Historical battles, myths, legends, even personal experiences. The important thing is that they contain patterns that might apply to the current situation. And one more thing, added Daeho with a small smile. When you tell these stories, you'll notice something strange. No matter how impatient or dismissive the aliens might seem at first, they will never interrupt you. Never? Asked a recruit. Not even once, confirmed Jimin. They've learned that the value of a human story isn't always obvious until it's finished. After the meeting, Daeho and Jimin walked with Elder Zan through the gardens outside the diplomatic building. Beautiful alien plants with blue and purple leaves moved gently in the breeze. There's something I've been wondering, said Daeho. Why did you let me finish my story about Admiral Yi at that first war council? You didn't know then what human stories could do? The ancient HFY was quiet for a moment. I am a telepath, Commander Kim. I can read the thoughts of most species in the coalition, but human minds are different. When you began your story, I sensed something unusual happening in your brain, connections forming in patterns I had never seen before. You were curious, said Jimin. Yes, and when I saw how your story changed the thinking of everyone in the council chamber, I knew we had discovered something important. They stopped by a pool of water where small creatures like glowing fish swam in graceful circles. We have added all the human stories from your battles to our database, said Elder Zan. They are being studied by coalition scientists and military strategists. Already we see patterns in how your stories help us think differently. Will humans always be just storytellers to the coalition? Asked Daeho. Earth has other things to offer besides old tales. In time, perhaps, said the elder. But for now, your stories are your greatest contribution. They are a form of cognitive technology that no other species possesses. As they walked back to the diplomatic building, they passed a group of alien diplomats. When the aliens noticed the humans, they bowed their heads slightly in respect. That's new, said Jimin quietly. They respect what they don't understand, said Elder Zan. And what they fear. Fear? Asked Daeho, surprised. They fear our stories? Not the stories themselves, explained the elder, but the possibility of missing the solution hidden within them. A room full of the most advanced minds in the galaxy now falls silent when a human begins to speak, not out of courtesy, but out of necessity. 6 months later, Jimin stood before a new group of human recruits. They were the third wave of storytellers, sent from Earth to serve as advisors throughout the coalition. The aliens still don't fully understand how our stories work, she told them. They see them as a kind of magic, a way of thinking they can't replicate. When you sit in those council chambers and feel the urge to tell a seemingly unrelated tale, do it. Just be prepared for the absolute silence that will follow. She smiled at the eager faces before her. Because now, nothing terrifies a room full of advanced aliens more than the possibility of missing the solution hidden in a human story. In the back of the room, Deho watched with pride. Humanity had found its place among the stars, not through superior technology or military might, but through the power of its oldest art form, storytelling. And no one, especially in a war council, dared interrupt.